Hello and welcome to Language Techniques with the Practice Managers Association. In this lecture, you will learn how to extract language techniques from source documents in order to answer exam questions. So we're going to go through a bunch of questions, well I say a bunch, probably two, just to show you what language techniques are and how to find them in your source documents. The same kind of source documents that you learn about in the Extracting Information lecture. Now, if you didn't watch that lecture, the source documents will be 3 different documents in your reading exam. That could be a letter, an email, a web page, a brochure or a leaflet, something like that. And you will have to answer questions based on those source documents. So it's a lot like comprehension techniques and things like that. So language techniques are what we are focusing on today. So let's just go through the types of language technique that you could come across or you could use. So the first thing is facts, so just a piece of information that is true. So for example, facts are used to demonstrate or emphasize a writer's point by providing evidence to support claims. For example, as well as nicotine, each cigarette contains more than 4,000 different chemicals, many of which are harmful to the body. So that is a fact. We then have opinions. So an opinion is an individual's own thought or belief. Like facts, opinions emphasize the point of a writer but make the message more personal rather than completely factual. So for example, smoking is an awful habit and anyone who smokes stinks. That is an opinion, not necessarily a fact, although most of the time people that do smoke do smell of the cigarette smoke. So, it's just a natural occurrence when you're a smoker. Statistics. So a statistic is like numerical data that could be found. So for example, 1 in 4 people or 50% chance of rain, something like that. So then we have rhetorical questions. These are the ones that you can find really easily in a source document because they always end with a question mark. They don't actually want you to answer the question, they're just giving you something to think about. So rhetorical questions are used to engage and involve the reader by making them think. These are typically used to make a text more persuasive. For example, how many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? Bob Dylan. We also can use emotive language, which is designed to make the reader feel something and have an emotional response to a text. This helps involve the reader and keeps them interested in reading on. For example, a distressing and harrowing example of cruelty. Okay, so a phrase like that would make you really think about the text and what it's about. You can also find emotive language in a lot of charity campaign adverts and things like that to try and make you donate. List of 3, also a nice one to pick out. That's 3 words or reasons put together in a list. So this technique helps emphasize the point of the text and involves the reader by giving a variation in sentence structures. So for example, this is a great, adaptable and fun language device. Okay, great, adaptable and fun. There's your list of 3. Nice and easy to pick out. A simile. So a simile is a figure of speech that expresses a resemblance between things of different kinds. So usually we use that with the words like or as. So for example, as cold as snow or as cold as ice. Okay, or as hot as the sun or something like that. This helps create an image within the reader's mind which helps interest them in the text. We can also use metaphors, which are harder to figure out or harder to pick out, but that's a figure of speech in which an expression is used to compare one thing to another by saying that it is that other thing. So the world is your oyster, meaning you can do anything you want, but it's used as a metaphor. This helps create an image within the reader's mind, which helps interest them in the text. Personification. A personification is used to give human qualities or characteristics to animals or objects. This gives a more detailed image in the mind of the reader, much like a simile or a metaphor, whilst keeping the reader interested through varied devices. For example, the pipes screeched in the night. Apparently pipes don't actually screech, that is a human quality. Okay. You can also say something like, the sun created a path through the forest by stepping over the rocks and plants, something like that. You're saying the sun is walking. Okay, so another language technique that we could look at is like the first person narration or the first person narrative. This is a narrative mode that involves one narrator speaking of and about themselves. So obviously they'll be using the word I, so this makes the text more personal, which interests the reader as they may feel like they can relate to the writer or that they know them somehow. Okay, so for example, I wrote a letter and I sent it to the North Pole. Okay, first person narrative. We can also use the third person narrative, which is a narrative mode that involves the narrator referring to characters as he, she, it, etc. Third person narration allows for a separation between the narrator and the character and allows for more information to be revealed to the audience that even the character may not be aware of. For example, she had long hair and she always wore it in a ponytail, so they're just using the words she or he or they or it in the third person. Alliteration is a really nice one and it's quite easy to pick out from the source documents. And an alliteration is the repetition of initial consonant sounds at the start of two or more words, which sounds really complicated, but basically it's just two or more words that have the same starting letter. An alliteration gives variation in sentences, which interests the reader, and it can also be used to make a particular point stand out. So, for example, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, or you could use she sells seashells on the seashore, but there are even more simple ones than that. You can have something that is as easy as babbling brook, or shiny sunset, or anything like that, anything that has the same beginning sound. We also have the five senses to use as language techniques. So when you're talking about a source document, you can talk about sounds, sight, smell, feelings and tastes. And the five senses and being able to describe these gives more detail to the text and helps create an image within the reader's mind. So for example, the smoke was thick and black as it rose from the earth, accompanied by the stench of scorched wood. So they're explaining the smell and the what they could see and how they felt. So short sentences is also a language technique. A short sentence is one clause, it is not lengthy. This makes information snappy and quick. Something as simple as stop, which can make certain points stand out more or give variation within the text to keep the reader interested. So if you can remember the campaign, stop, look, listen, live, they were all very short sentences. Stop being a one-word sentence, look being a one-word sentence, and so on. Okay, and now we have direct address. Now, direct address is used loads, so if you can't find a language technique, this one will most certainly be there, well, most of the time or a lot of the time. And direct address is when the text addresses the reader. So this can be done through the second person narration, so they are talking to you. They will use the word you, and a lot of the time this is to persuade you to do something. You must join our holiday club, or you must visit this resort, or whatever. They're using you, so that makes you feel a part of what they're doing. Directly addressing the reader involves them in the text and makes them think harder about what the text is saying. For example, you should consider how these revision cards will help you in your exam. Okay. Repetition is also a nice one that is quite easy to find. Repetition is obviously the repeated use of the same word or phrase, and it's used to emphasize a certain point and usually makes a text more powerful. Sorry, it's very windy today. I've got so much going on around me, so I hope you can't hear too much of the wind. So, for example, 'tis a lesson you should heed, try again. If at first you don't succeed, try again. So it's quite a nice repetitive phrase. Now, sibilance is a more difficult one, and it tends to be used more in GCSE than in functional skills, but it is just a type of alliteration. So rather than using something like babbling brook or shiny sunset or whatever I used before, sibilance is actually just using the sound S. So we could use an alliteration with every other letter, but if we use it with an S, it is a sibilance. And the S sound is just the one that's repeated. It gives variation in sentences, which interests the reader, apparently. It can also be used to make a particular point stand out for a select purpose, such as the sound of water. For example, 7 sly sea serpents swimming in the sea. Some of these are huge mouthfuls. You don't have to identify ones as long as that. It could be something as short and snappy as 2 words, so don't panic. And I will show you how to pick them out. So, punctuation is another one. The use of certain marks to clarify meaning of written material by grouping words grammatically into sentences and clauses and phrases. Punctuation helps structure sentences as well as intonation clues. These variations keep the reader interested and engaged. So, for example, a rising intonation in questions, or a tone, are you well, is a question, or a sense of emergency in exclamatory statements, such as help, and they use an exclamation point. Okay, ellipsis. So we're getting towards ones now that you probably haven't heard of or you might find difficult, but just bear with me and I will show you how easy it is to pick them out of the questions. So where an ellipsis is when elements have been omitted from a sentence, phrase or word. So they are missing. It can demonstrate a more relaxed register or an informal way of talking or writing, and it's like a contraction as well. So you've shortened words. So for example, I'm hungry instead of I am is less formal, obviously, than I am hungry. Anything like there, you're shortening from they are, or can't, as in you're shortening cannot, and things like that. So any of those are an ellipsis. Jargon, and jargon refers to technical language that relates to a specific topic or subject, which can seem like gibberish to someone who is not knowledgeable in that subject. It can make a text sound more professional. It may also include people who know the jargon, whilst including those who do not, so it may reflect the target audience of the text. So for example, a medical book may contain words like cranium, transfusion, or appendicitis. Okay, so now we've looked at the types of language technique. We're going to, oh sorry, there's one more, I think. Oh no, two more, just couldn't fit them all on. Okay, so hyperbole, which is the top one. Hyperbole is like extreme exaggeration, like my life is over, or I'm going to die if I don't get that book or that phone or anything like that, or making a mountain out of a molehill. So a hyperbole is just an exaggeration. A pun is like a play on words, so words that might have a double meaning or that sound the same but have different meanings. They're often considered witty and are used to engage the reader. So for example, shoes have soles, which is a joke, as shoes actually have soles, not souls. So play on the spelling there. And taboo language, I think this is the last one. So taboo language are, words or phrases or subjects that are typically avoided because they're considered offensive. So for example, subjects like period poverty used to be a taboo subject and still is in some countries or continents. And the use of taboo language in some texts may demonstrate the writer's attempt to shock the reader, or if the text is between two friends, taboo language may demonstrate a relaxed relationship. So for example, you would not find swear words in stories for young children, but you may find swear words in stories written for teenagers and adults for a specific effect. Okay, so here is a question. Now this will give you anywhere between 2 and 4 marks. I just omitted the marks for some reason. Identify 2 language techniques used by the author to put pressure on the new employee. Support your answers with quotes from the text. Now just to give you a bit of background, we've literally just gone through all of the different types of language technique, and now I'm looking at this question, which is a typical question from a City and Guilds paper. So I have got the text that we have been using for this, and it's just here. Okay, so let's just go back to the question before we look at the text in a bit more detail. And this is the same text I used for lecture 1 on extracting information. So identify 2 language techniques used by the author to put pressure on the new employee. Okay, so looking at this, again, I mentioned this in the previous lecture. You can read the entire source document beforehand if you want, but I do not recommend that. I tend to skim and scan. It makes it easier for me. To me, if I read it too quickly, obviously I do read it, but just quite quickly, and I skim through and see if I can find things that I need to find for the question. Okay, so let's look for some language techniques. If you want to pause the video, I have attached the source documents and the actual exam paper to this lecture. So if you want to pause the video and have a go at the question before I go through it, you can. So just go ahead and do that now. Okay, if you've paused it, let's go through which language techniques we can pick out. Now, I've not just picked out the 2, I've picked out more than that, just so you can get an idea of what might be in here. Okay, so you have done exceptionally well to gain a position here. Okay, so this you could be direct address. You could also say they're using particular language here to increase the reader's happiness that she got the position. They're using positive language, but we can just say direct address and explain that they are talking directly to the reader and hopefully increasing her excitement for her new job. The same here, strong foundations of good customer service. Okay, so that could still be part of this one here. making sure we provide the best possible mobile phones to suit a person's lifestyle. Again, just very positive language. I've still got plenty more, don't worry. So wants, needs and desires. That would be our list of 3. We've got 3 things in a row there. Wants, needs and desires. We also have, can you master that? Question mark, giving us a rhetorical question. We also have allow you to meet your sales targets, which is more direct address. And then, are you ready for the challenge, which is again a rhetorical question. So, in our answer, identify 2 language techniques used by the author to put pressure on the new employee. I've used direct address, you have done exceptionally well, allow you to meet your sales targets, okay? So, it's putting pressure on her because, first of all, they're telling her she has done really well. Well, then you want to try and make sure you keep up with that label that you've received, so you tend to try, and it does put pressure on people. Allow you to meet your sales targets, letting her know she will have sales targets and to make sure she meets them. Secondly, rhetorical questions. Can you master that? Are you ready for the challenge? Sorry, I've missed a Y there. Are you ready for the challenge? Okay, so we've answered that question. I just added this one on the end, list or rule of 3. Now, I know it only says 2, but I just thought I'd list everything that we found, wants, needs and desires. Okay? Right, so looking at this question, this is a 4 marker. Identify and give give examples of 2 language techniques being used in the text and explain how they help to convey meaning. Okay, now, for my answers here, I probably haven't written as much as they might like, but you will get the idea, and then you could probably explain it in a bit more detail. I've just done it for ease. So the source document that we need to look at to find 2 language techniques, okay. So looking at the text that they want us to find the language techniques from here, let's go through and see what we've picked out. Again, if you want to have a go, please press pause now and have a go at the question before I go through it. Okay, if you press pause, or even if you just continue with the video, that's fine. So, first of all, you can read his reviews. That's direct address, you. They want you to get involved. Stylish, super fast smartphones, an alliteration, or actually a sibilance because it's all S's, so it's up to you which one you use. You will not be marked wrong if you use alliteration or sibilance. Don't panic. There is also another alliteration / sibilance one here, swayed by the pushy sales advisor or the shiny displays. There's a lot of S's in there, so we can still use that. Then we have, what will you be using your smartphone for? Question mark, rhetorical questions. Watching videos and reading ebooks, question mark, another rhetorical question. Okay. Then big is beautiful, another alliteration. Okay, let's see how many more we've got. Okay, that's a mistake. I don't think that's meant to be there. Boring bits, another alliteration, and I think that's about it. So we've got quite a few. We've got lots of direct address, lots of sibilance or alliteration here, 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 and then we've got 2 rhetorical questions, which is quite nice. Okay, so on my answers, I'm going to write down the ones that I've found. Identify and give examples of 2 language techniques being used in the text. So the first one I'm going to use is alliteration. And explanation of the technique, the writer uses alliterations such as boring bits and stylish, super fast smartphone. Now, the only bit I haven't written here is why he may have used that. And the reason why he may have used that is it might create variety within the text to engage the reader and keep the reader, well, like I say, to engage the reader or keep the reader engaged in order to finish the piece of the reading, in order to finish reading what is on the website. Can't get my words out, sorry. Okay, so that's one. So you just need to kind of explain that in a bit more detail whenever you do some work for me or in your exam as well. The second chosen technique was the rhetorical questions because I thought they were the easiest. And I've just put here, the writer uses rhetorical questions such as, do you need the battery to last for days? And what will you use your phone for? Watching videos and reading ebooks. Ah, that's why I underlined days. I said I think that was a mistake, but it wasn't. It says, do you need the battery to last for days? And what will you use your phone for? Watching videos and reading ebooks. So lots of rhetorical questions. You could say that is also used to engage the reader, make them think about what they want, and things like that. Okay, so it's quite a nice question when you know how to answer it. Okay, so well done, and if there are any, if I'm going through the lectures a bit too quickly or you think you need some more work on it, just comment on the end of the course or send me an email. It is sadie@practicemanagersuk.org, and you can email me anytime with any queries and any information. I've attached a task to this lecture, so if you are watching it or if you've watched it, please complete the task and email it to me to the email address that I have provided. Okay, thank you very much. Well done, and thank you from PMA.